Hello and welcome to this video on bottling home brew. Bottling is the best option to store your work except kegging, which is preferable in some limited cases. It can be very easy or you can be very thorough. The choice depends on the result you want, the type of brew, or the work you want to do in the future. Bottling is somewhat essential if you want to age or keep a store on hand. Even more important if you want to sample your work as it goes on. Good examples of this are beer and aging. You start with clean, sterile and properly labelled bottles of the size you want to use. Ensure they are clean and sterile, or your work will go to waste in less than a week. Once you have these bottles sorted, put them to a side to cool. Let's begin with the assumption that you have brewed a reasonably large amount of beer or even cider, relatively straightforward items to bottle. 25 litres is a standard fermenter batch size. This should be around room temperature, which is 20 to 25 degrees centigrade, or 68 to 77 degrees Fahrenheit. You want the bottles to be room temperature after cooling down to match this. You now have your bottles and your brew, which leads to the first bottling option, using a bottle filler to tap directly into the fermenter. You will need to have used a fermenter tank with a tap or spigot fitted, otherwise the alternative option is needed. You begin by adding your choice of clearing agent to the brew. This will force the sediment to the bottom or as close as possible in this case. Make sure the tap or spigot on the fermenter is closed. Insert the tube of the bottle filler into the tap, and ensure it is both into as far as it will go and sits tight. If not, the pressure may push it out, or the seal will break and make a mess. Now open the tap. The filler should keep the fluid in until you apply pressure. Take a bottle and place it over the filler until it is just above the bottom of the bottle. Gently raise the bottle up until the pressure pushes the filler open, and the bottle begins to fill. When the beer, cider or other beverage of choice reaches the top of the bottle, or just under, relax the pressure on the filler and drop the bottle just slightly. This will close the valve. Now you take the bottle straight down and away from the filler. This will leave a small amount of headroom where the filler, the valve apparatus, and similar were, before you took them away. It is just enough room to account for carbonating. If your clearing agent has worked, it will be clear. If it has not, as is the case here, it will be cloudy or murky. You now add carbonating tablets, sugar, or best of all glucose in the right dose to each bottle. You'll find a link to carbonating your bottles in the top right. You now close the bottle caps tightly and wait a couple of weeks. After this, you have carbonated, quality bottled beverages. All of this has of course assumed that you do not need to take the second approach to bottling. This is slightly different in that you will often not be bottling for the purposes of storing the contents, but instead you are either looking to transfer or separate them. This is sometimes called racking. The benefit of this is that it quickly and easily works. The downside is that it is not as effective. This is simply a matter of combining your clearing agent and brew. Wait 24 hours, and then you are able to begin work. The work is simple in theory, but technical in practice, requiring a steady hand to achieve good results. You take the first bottle, and begin pouring the contents off from the cake which is formed at the base of the bottle via the clearing agent. There will be tendrils that bleed off from this cake, but pouring slowly will minimize the volume that separates. Pouring too quickly, and these tendrils will quickly pull large sections of the cake with it, undoing all your work. The alternative in the case of a fermenter is to open the spigot a fractional amount. This will lead to a slow pour from the fermenter. If the clearing agent has worked, this should be very clear. By using a slow flow at a very low rate and a very low volume, the cake bleed will again be minimized. This can be poured into a bottle with the use of a funnel. The slow transfer is important, and depending on the volume you are working with, this can be difficult. Any slips or sudden changes in the flow rate can cause the cake to begin breaking up. Eventually, you will have a second bottle filled with your brew, but not the sedimentary parts. It will be a slightly smaller volume, but depending upon what you are trying to achieve, this may be of benefit. This can be fermented a second time, filtered, or otherwise refined. Finally, there is a third way that will not be discussed in great length here. It is siphoning. You can siphon off the top part of any brew to remove the mostly liquid part with minimal inclusions like sediment. Siphoning is a bit more difficult and will get its own video. It also requires a substantially steadier hand and a more involved process than simply pouring the two parts into different bottles. The two methods that have been explained will allow you to bottle your brew or separate it into different bottles in such a way that it can be stored, used, or refined for future use. Thank you for watching this video. If you have found it useful, consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. Please post any comments, questions, or suggestions below.